Friends, our cast is here. Well, we're going to keep this pretty open format. If anyone has any questions, you're welcome to just raise your hand and ask. I will kick us off. So, when you were cast at the beginning of May, you got the phone call that you've been selected for, this is our second iteration of the show. We did this last year with a different cast, different stories. And you were there, Alexia is our returning member. And we told you now you have to write your own piece. To me, that feels like a long time ago now. How do you feel in your journey as artists through this entire process? Anyone's welcome to start.
Yeah. Ladies first. Thank you. I was just gonna start us off with saying, for me, this is my kind of official first time as an actress, and so. You know, I told myself that this was something that was always a passion of mine, and I always wanted to get into it. And being a native of Alabama, you know, there weren't a lot of theater sets like this, and so to be able to be here and be making my dreams come true, it's very full circle. It was good.
I don't think I want to come behind that.
You got it.
So the journey to get to this point, I actually initially started off with a poem. And then they're like, well, let's see if we can like up the ante on this. And we'll just see what happens. Well, y'all saw what happened. So, I mean, it was challenging, definitely coming into it. It was a moment of the world is your oyster type of thing. So however you wanted to express the story, it was available. Or at least you could try to imagine it first, and then we can make it happen on the stage. So.
When I auditioned, I actually auditioned with the character of Claude. And they said, well, we have somebody who killed their audition that auditioned with Claude, so who do you want to do? They booked. And they said, is there anyone else that you would do? And I was like, well, you know, they had a partner, Marcel. I didn't know as much about Marcel, and when I did my research, there was actually very little online about Marcel, because they are so intertwined with Claude's story. And so I had this whole thing of like, oh my God, how am I gonna find this information on them? And luckily I was able to find like books and quotes that were able to give me some insight into the role, but, and we talked about this a little bit the other night. I think I was able to take the information I had, but there were these like big gaps in the story of like, who is Marcel? And once I was able to find something that like clicked with me and my experience, I was like, okay, I think I understand this more. And I kind of had to fill in those gaps with just who I am. And I think a lot of us had to do that in one way or another. And I think what's so special about the show is, you know, Alexia's Dawn will look different than Mallory's Dawn and Felix's Dawn. We all bring something very different and very unique to our Trancestors, and I think it felt like a celebration of us as well as our Trancestors, which was really, really cool to experience.
I will just second that, because I don't know why it didn't process for me when we auditioned that we would have to also write the pieces. And so when Shaan gave me the call and we started talking about it, I was like, oh shit. I probably should have found someone with a lot more information available about them. But it became such this beautiful like experience and journey of like, kind of like how you said, filling in those gaps and being open to the interpretation of what their life could have looked like, and also kind of bringing my own experience and feelings, because before I knew it, it felt like Jose and I became one and the same, and I even mentioned to Shaan, it does not feel like an accident that I found him and wanted to research him. And it just became this very overwhelming process, but the most like gracious and fulfilling of like a creative experience I've had in a very, very long time.
Agree with everything so far. I actually came across Claude about a year ago. I was originally planning on being in Trancestors last year, but Tori Amos had other plans, so.
Amir wasn't available for one of our performances because they were going to see Tori Amos, so we couldn't.
Was that really it?
Yeah, Tori Amos on my birthday. I was like, it's important.
It was meant to happen.
You got to listen to her Siren song. But I'd had Claude in mind continually, so when the call came out for Trancestors again, I'm like, I really want to play Claude. This is who spoke to me, and this is whose story wants to be told. And it was interesting, what I knew about Claude, the surrealism and the fighting Nazis and all that stuff was just one level. And then when I started reading some of Claude's writings and the quotes that came from Claude, I was just like, why? I was just kind of drawn into everything that Claude wrote, everything that came from Claude's mouth. Everything that Claude said on stage are direct quotes. And I didn't feel like putting it into my own words would really give any justice to the beauty that Claude had in their own writing. And I don't know, I just got so swept up in all of everything that Claude had that I was just like, I can see why I identify with this person. I can see why, based on what Claude had to say, I identify with other artists that have had similar vibes, similar maskings or reinventions, as Madonna would put it. But I could see why I was attracted to artists that I was attracted to, and what it was about this whole safety in performance that you don't find in life outside of the performance. And as much as you saw on stage today, the quotes, the piles and piles of quotes that were not heard tonight are just so gorgeous. So yeah, I feel like me and Claude are not done chatting.
Well, completely different for me. I didn't write anything this year except the ending. I changed it because I did it last year. Because another cast member who I never got to meet had a family emergency, and so I was called in last second, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is kind of the thing I do as an actor. People are like, we're fucked, can you come help? And I'm like, but yeah, it was great because I got to work with all of these people, and last year it was such a beautiful show, but there was also like a drag show and some camp and like a farce in it, and so my show was like the downer. And like someone literally came up and they're like, your show was really triggering, but in a good way. But this year it felt much more at home. Like it was a balanced show. But I first came across Dawn, who has 3 autobiographies. It's kind of like the Gospels, they're all a little different. But I voiced her in a documentary, which you saw a clip from at the very end, which I had not gotten to see until the end of our performance last year. And then I was like, oh, I was being a Debbie Downer last year a little bit at the ending. I was like, what if? And Don was like, nah, bitch, I'm good. I get the last laugh, fuck you. So that was nice to bring that hopefulness in and that evolution for me in my own life and with Don. So, yeah.
Awesome. Does anybody have any questions?
In the audience?
Hi, Matt. I feel like a lot of the pieces this year spoke about like queer love and queer complexities and queer joy. So could you speak about like what it means to center that specifically with this age of like anti-queerness that we're in?
Yeah. Well, this year's show focused on global and BIPOC perspectives. And we had someone here in the audience last night who asked about some of the more well-known trans folks in history. And I was really interested when we talked about what we wanted to do this year. I was really interested in having perspectives that we really haven't heard, because I was curious on what was going to come through, and I actually didn't know any of these stories with the exception of yours. I know yours from last year, but I didn't know any of these stories, and I think that was sad to me, but also very real, that our stories are kept from each other, kept from us as a community. And so kind of the idea of even doing the show from that perspective felt like queer joy, felt like trans joy to me. And so I wanted to feel like an offering to our community to hear stories from perspectives that we don't hear, from cultures that we don't really get a sense of, from trans folks who lived in those spaces. And so that felt very much important to me this year.
Yeah. Just encapsulating that, we're dealing with so much hate and scaredness and division, because if you really look at it, we're at an end of an era, and stories are what always help us get to the next era. And this is exactly how we make that new tapestry, is going and looking deep at the hard stuff, but also allowing to just, see the edges of that Polaroid picture, just the edges of the sky around the storm, and like, oh, okay, there's still something there holding that. And the only way through the storm is together. And so that's what we've been doing tonight, is we've been walking through the storm, singing our songs with joy. Because this shit is heavy, but y'all were laughing, and I'm like, yeah, I told y'all it was a funny show. They get it. So it's really important to remember that fascism, so much pointed in your piece, ignorance, division, and us not being seen as human beings to each other or ourselves. That's how hate wins. And stories and joy are literally the death of hate. And that's the best way to fight fascism. Oh. So
Isn't that how Freddy is finally killed in Wes Craven's New Nightmare?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, going off of that, yeah, I mean, I think starting working on this piece, we actually started doing like Zoom meetings, and I think, we both met with Shaan separately. And so when we were approaching this piece, at least for me, I was approaching it from like the history of like what were the facts that happened. And then I think what really made this piece click was the love story, and like the joy in that. And I love this question so much, because I think so many, whenever we do get representation, so many queer and trans stories are all in like, my life is hard because I'm queer, and my life is hard because I'm trans, which is so valid, but there's also joy there. And I think it's just as important to represent that joy and those love stories and those, full lives, because these are people who are living full lives, just as much as it is to represent those hardships. And, even in there's trans joy, not just in the love stories and everything, but like, even in showing up to this rehearsal, when we got on our first Zoom meeting, I got off and like cried because I was like, whoa, there are so many cool trans people that I'm about to meet. And then like walking into this space every day, like everybody involved in this production, almost everybody I believe, is gender expansive or identifies somewhere within that realm. And like personally as an actor, I've never been in a professional space where I'm not the like only person that identifies like that. Not only that, but like the majority of people in this production are on that spectrum. And I don't even know how to describe the feeling. Like we were talking about just how lucky we are and like how rare this is to get to do. And I think like the joy in just showing up every day was palpable, truly.
Yeah, I would add as well, when creating the monologue for Mary, I connected with Shaan about this, especially kind of like the love story as well as the tragedy of Mary's truth. As you all saw that she did encounter, and she was a survivor of sexual assault. And I think it was important to highlight that, especially because her profession was a survivor sex worker. Her case, the trial that was presented, set a precedent for how sex workers are treated in the state of New York, especially those of color. And you have to keep in mind this was 1830s New York. She's one of the first documented trans folks, and then even black trans folks, but then also considering the fact that she was a free woman in 1830s America, which was not the case for a lot of people. So to be bold within your truth, and then to also weave in that story of love with Robert and the betrayal, which I think just a lot of people can resonate with in any era, but then also reconnecting with someone who she least expected, like Ezra, you know, who had just kind of was that first person who greeted her in the beginning and told her that he saw the beauty, and that kind of inspired her journey, and at the very end they end up connecting. So I wanted to make sure that that was conveyed as well, that despite the tragedy that Mary went through in that moment, that there was still going to be a very happily ever after.
It's interesting since you bring that up. For some of these folks, we had books in their own writing, we had information from their own words, and for Mary Jones, there was just a newspaper article, and it didn't have the details of her life. So part of this process was not just the facts, but also why this person might have made the decisions that they did, who were they, and then how the artist would connect to them as a person. So Mallery is very much a romantic, which I found out as the more we talked and got to know each other through the rehearsal process. And so that part of who she is came into Mary's story. And similar with Felix, like there was only a newspaper article available for Jose Manuel Pacini. And so just kind of with that information, why would this person have gotten married, and what was it about them that, you know, wanted this life for themselves? And in what ways could Felix connect with that? So that was part of our approach through this process.
So I know like I look like I drink pumpkin spice lattes, but I swear to God, like I'm Hispanic. And it's like really good to see like representation, because like it's just so necessary for us that are like transgender and people of color to like see some of us just out there and like in our history. And there's so much erasure with that. And I would like to ask the cast, like, as you're presenting these like really like obscure stories, or these like stories of people who aren't like the super like famous or well known, how do we like continue to bring those to light and like share those? And also, what about our stories? Like, how do we like bring ourselves out into the forefront in like a safe way? Because like I like ordering pumpkin spice latte.
So to recap your question, you're saying how do we present more of these stories, and how do we also present our own stories?
Yeah, like how do we preserve our history?
Preserve our history.
Share that.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I think that's part of what we wanted to do with this show. is to be able to pull out these histories that aren't well known. I think everyone does it in their own way, and I think Nicole was talking about this the other day, is everyone's gonna have their own way. For us as storytellers, as performers, writers, directors, we're gonna do it in this medium because it just feels right. Does anyone else want to speak to that?
I think there's a good amount of breaking walls that we have to do, break into spaces that are not used to having us, and kind of doing kind of a combination of finding the spaces that do want us there at the same time as trying to break into the ones that don't, because we do need the ones that love us and that support us and that want to foster our stories, but we also gotta do what we can to smash down the systems that are already in place, that have been going on without a challenge, that are the same voices being heard constantly over and over again. But that can't be the only place that we live. So it's a matter of finding that balance of, cool, these people are feeding me, these people are trying to drain my soul, like let me make sure that I'm getting a balance of both, and also surrounding yourself with people who want to foster your voice and help you figure out how you want to tell your story.
I think it's also like, so Dr. Pauly Murray, was integral throughout the foundation of our society today. And I believe that he has started to get some of the recognition, but not necessarily that which he deserves. So we take spaces like this to share these stories, so that way, this is the history class you didn't know you were missing. You know? So like now we'll keep going, and you all have now heard stories. We'll be inclined to try to research some of these folks. You'll share, and the stories will keep going, just like Alexia said. That's actually the original way in which we even had any form of story. That's how we taught each other and raised our young, if you will. It was through stories. You tell them about generational things. You don't negate the negative to only celebrate the positive. Embrace the negative to reinforce what was positive, and then be able to build a strong foundation for us all to continue to move forward.
Something to discuss.
Not opposed.
What was the most meaningful part of this experience?
What was the most meaningful part of this experience?
I mean, you're kind of seeing it, getting to come together in community and share our community stories. It's a severe gift to have that access, to live in a time that we can do that despite all that's going on around us. And that fact hasn't been lost on us, I think, any of us since day one. Like I come in here and I get to see these faces And I just find myself in so much gratitude, not knowing if an experience like this was going to be possible. I'm going to take that with me forever. So.
I second that. Yeah, I mean, trans and queer community truly makes so much of a difference. I think also tonight felt really special, knowing that with Affinity Night, that this audience was gonna be very queer and very trans. Like, we could feel it backstage from like the moment y'all were entering the house. We were like, ooh, there's energy here. There's energy here, yeah. I think, yeah, community and just feeling like, I think in a performance in such a public way to be ourselves, like so authentically, is something I definitely am gonna miss. I can't believe we're closing, yeah.
Yeah, I would say for me as well, this incredible bond that we have. It's my first cast and crew and chosen family on stage that I'm so incredibly thankful for. But what was also meaningful for me is to give Mary her voice. She has been silenced for centuries, and it was important for her to be represented. And I'm also just thankful for all of our incredible Trancestors been highlighted on the projector. You got to see their images and really get to know who these people were. And I know for me, that's what just brings me joy, as well as to know that I'm sure Mary is very proud of the fact that her voice has been heard, and you all are here to witness that. So thank you all for being here as well.
I'll share. I mean, I think it's been such a quick process, but I think even just thinking about a few weeks ago, meeting with each individual artist, because it really did start off with one-on-one conversations, and then everyone really didn't meet each other until like just 2 weeks ago. Is that 2.5 weeks ago? We had our first like group rehearsal. So I think just like getting to see everybody grow in that period of time has been beautiful. Felix's scarf, you know, discovering that as a part of the show to represent Barbara, you know, just all like the little things that were creative, like gems that we found through the process has been my favorite part. And then of course, Affinity Night. Tonight's show was fire. And I think it's because we had this energy in the space. So definitely appreciate everybody for being here.
How long it took to rehearse for this project, and how did you get attracted to join the cast?
How long was the rehearsal process, and then how did you get attracted to join the cast? I'm going to do a quick time check as well. Are we okay on time? 5 more minutes? Okay, so this is our last question. And then we have light refreshments outside as well. Yeah? So the rehearsal process, yeah, really, that's as soon as everyone was cast at the beginning of May, I sent them a list of 20 to 21 questions of research, how to, you know, things to kind of delve into and do a deep dive on the Trancestor, including what was the art of the time, what were the politics of the time, what was the music of the time, how did they walk, what kinds of shoes might they have been, things that would help us just uncover a little bit more about who these people were as humans. We found photos, media, as much as we could find, and that was really the first week to 2 weeks. And then I think about another 2 weeks of actual writing. Everyone sent me a first draft, and then we talked individually about the first draft and started to just expand each piece from there. And then about 2 weeks to get the pieces on their feet in the space and work with our amazing stage manager, Levy, who
Yeah, Lee.
Come on out. Lee is our assistant stage manager. our lighting design as well. We have a whole team that came together to pull the show together. And Alex as well, our producer. Catch-all role to do everything that somebody else wasn't doing. So Alex, thank you. And then do you want to speak about the second half of the question?
Yeah, I'll start with, actually, I was, I guess, initially attracted to this project after attending last year's performance, which was remarkable. I'm not gonna lie, my initial hesitation was, I don't know if I can live up to last year's stories. They were breathtaking, they were just, I mean, there are some things out there, guys. Y'all clearly don't know. So last year was like I was saying, that was when I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that. I can't tell y'all what it is because when they come back and do it, you won't know. So I can't give away the secrets. So that's the initial interest, and then. When we applied, I mean, we had to say who we were interested in. I wasn't exactly sure that that's exactly who we would get, right? I was like, I mean, this person's interesting. But then I got fired up, I'm not gonna lie, about my person, because it took a while for me to even land on any information regarding Pauline Murray. And then in turn, like just nonstop reading. I think I spent the first week and a half after submitting my audition, like just talking everyone's ear off about them and being like, why don't we know this, you know? So I became really passionate about the story, about his story and about his life. I mean, I'm from DC, so you telling me that where I like to go, down on U Street, which is right down the street from Howard University, that the person that was responsible for helping convert that area and the rest of the city essentially hasn't been talked about. I was like, after all the things that we talk about, I mean, again, from DC, we come in DC proud, you know, all day, and we are history proud. Frederick Douglass House is right down the street, something we can very easily walk to and learn from. So there's all the museums, all the things, but this story you wanted to sweep under the rug. So how many more stories are swept under the rug? And that's what this was. Like, I enjoyed learning about all of these individuals just as much as I enjoyed learning about the person I chose. So, yeah.
For me, there were a couple of things that attracted me to this project. For one, that Celebration had become a new theater, and I wanted to be a part of this new, inclusive, welcoming celebration that was actually interested in stories beyond gay men who look a particular way. So I was very interested in not only being a part of Celebration living up to its mission statement and what Celebration should have been for the longest time, but I wanted to be a part of that. And for me, it was really important to not only tell the story of a trans individual, but to also find the intersectionality of a Jewish trans person, because so many times white supremacy does a good job of erasing Jews from the conversation. And so it was very important for me to find the intersection of Jews and trans folk. And that's why I was like, I gotta hold on to Claude, and I need to dig in and tell this story with this new queer theater.
I was not sure that I was going to actually audition for this. I'm really glad that I did. I got encouraged to by friends. This is the first production that I've gotten to do being openly out as a gender fluid person. Yeah, and I was like very scared to audition. And then when I got an audition, I was like, oh shit, okay, let me audition. And then when they offered me the role, I was like, oh, okay, shit, I'm doing it now. But I have been very lucky to have people in my life to support me in this. And yeah, I'm just like, oh, how lucky am I that Celebration exists and that there was something like this for me to get to do this as like a first. So I'm glad that I didn't book Claude, but did book Marcel.
I can remember wanting so bad to audition for this last year, and just due to conflicts, it just didn't work, and I was...
A concert.
Were you all set, Tori?
It wasn't Tori, it might have been a concert, crap. But nonetheless, call me out, okay? But I was indeed heartbroken by it, but I knew that if ever given the chance that this show came back, I was gonna hop at that opportunity no matter what, like nothing was gonna get in the way. Not knowing if I was gonna book it or not, but just to be able to have that opportunity to audition for something so unabashedly queer and trans, like that was, the idea of that was so cool to me. And so when I got the call and knew that I was gonna be just like researching and writing about this person, I was really glad that I trusted my instinct to find someone of Latino heritage, and because I've had just the personal experience in my life of a lot of erasure, trans, queer erasure, my Latino culture erasure. So I wanted the opportunity to reconnect to both. And in finding Jose, it was like, oh my God, I can do all of this research and really like dive into like something that's unfortunately so foreign to me, but something that I felt was so necessary. And just let my ADHD interest of just going down this rabbit hole of finding anything I could and creating this beautiful life and world for him that I think needed to be honored. And it was wonderful.
Last year, my manager sent out like, hey, there is an audition. That's me doing an impression of my manager, who is how I met Shaan, because used to have the same representation. I was like, I don't know, and then I saw Shaan was directing. I'm like, okay, fuck it, I'll audition, and here we are.
Thank you everyone for being here. We have